Welcome to the Waiting List podcast. Tell us the story.
It's like many things you start building from scratch.
And then I'm like, wait, I really do like watches because
You've seen so many watches that makes you excited.
I think I really do like watches.
Yeah. I think it's a great way to see if you are a watch enthusiast. Welcome to the Waiting List podcast, where I'm truly happy to welcome Thomas Perazzi, who is firstly my friend, but also head of Watches Asia for Phillips Auction House. He's also one of the most knowledgeable people I know in watches, period. Welcome to the show, Thomas, and thank you for making time.
Daniel, hello, welcome to everyone. Thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to join this podcast.
For those that don't know, we actually interviewed Thomas in episode 1 of this podcast, where Thomas actually shares with us how he ended up in the watch auction industry. It's a real candid story that I did not know until Thomas shared it with me over one night over dinner, and I was completely blown away. Actually, it's quite inspirational. Admittedly, the episode being one of our first is a little cringy to go back and listen to, but the story is quite something. So I would encourage all our listeners to go back to episode 1 and listen to that. So now that the pleasantries have been done, let's get this interview underway. And my first question is, what, in your opinion, Thomas, makes a successful auctioneer, a good auctioneer?
Auctioneer in our job, in our market, whatever department the auctioneer is the auctioneer that first is a specialist. So he knows what he's selling. And of course, a specialist of the department. So he knows all the backstories of all the sellers. Because don't forget that one of the key points of an auctioneer is to protect the seller's interest. And of course, you know the audience. You know where to look at when you're selling a specific lot, a gentleman in the room, or maybe a colleague is on the phone, or maybe you're waiting someone that you know that is watching you online. So that for me are the three main aspects to be a successful auctioneer.
Okay, so let's take that a little bit deeper, because the auction is seen as the bar at which prices are gauged, where trends and standards can ripple into the secondary market. A lot of people will say, the current price of this watch, look at the auction price, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of probably people that aren't associated with the auction house or have never had the experience of an auction house will think of astronomical prices and the gavel hammering down. For those that don't know, the gavel is the auction hammer. But what actually goes on behind the scenes to produce the magic? So let's say, how'd you get the watches, and then what's the process?
So now to basically an average time to create an international watch catalog, it takes no less than 6 months. Sometimes could take 12, 18, even 24 months when we have special projects or we are entrusted by sellers with extremely important or rare timepieces. So let's say a regular catalog, it takes 6 months. So of course, basically once the auctioneer hammers the last lot of a sale, the day after, immediately we are actively looking for lots, objects to be included in the next catalog. So it's a never-ending process. And luckily we have now at Philips have access to a large worldwide community of collectors that they entrust what we do. They like what they do, and they're as passionate as us. And we, contacting them and see. We discuss first the results of the latest auctions. We discuss about the watch market, and then we accordingly decide if they maybe want to separate a timepiece or several timepieces from their collection and including the next auction. Sometimes also we do receive like lucky phone calls, like completely unexpected owners of incredible timepieces that suddenly they decide to sell. And of course, we also have a look at the professional side of the market. So basically the merchants of the watch industry that are actively working in the secondary market. Sometimes they do want to also try to work with us. So let's say that all the lots are being collected. Of course, the preparation of the catalog also is extremely long. Our catalogers, they are spending like 3, 4, even 5 months actively working on the description, because for us researchers are extremely important, because we are not just offering watches with a picture and then an estimate or a price. We try to explain why a collector should look into this piece, why a collector should be interested on acquiring this piece and adding this piece to his or her collection. And especially in the vintage watches, because, you know, for contemporary or modern watches, information are quite accessible to everyone. But when you look into what vintage watches were like made in the 40s, 50s, or even earlier, where the information are not really accessible online, well, that makes I think the Phillips catalog a difference, because thanks to our good relationship with all the brands and all the heritage departments, we can ask them to look deeper in their archives, to do extra researches to try to find out, you know, more details that maybe they were not available before to the public. And then, of course, the previews, I think, like since early 2020, so more than a year ago, as we all know, we have been affected by this horrible and catastrophic pandemic. And of course, we have been all stopped or grounded. So we were not able to visit and to greet our customers worldwide. Mm. And we decided to continue with our international tours. At Philips, I have to say we're quite proud that we have the largest touring before auctions. That means that we try to reach out the most of the key important cities or where our clients, our collectors are living, in order to let them have access in any way to the watches that we're going to offer, especially when you are looking into a vintage watch or a high value timepiece before acquiring. You would like to, you know, to experience the timepiece. You would like to take your look, get closer to the dial, could be hallmarks if it is the case in made in gold, and having just the pleasure of wearing it, you know, see how it looks like on your wrist. And then, as I always say in Italian, we have an expression, you know, if the watch gives you emotions, if the watch sings to you, those I think are extremely important facts that at the end, with all that process, when you arrive at the auction day and the specific lot or all the lots are opened, you see the difference. You see that you can engage with really collectors from all the world.
Mm. So one thing you highlight there is, and previously in your original question about being a successful auctioneer, was the knowledge of being a watch specialist. I would like to know, how much knowledge can you gain from books, and how much it actually needs to be with the real timepiece within your hand?
I would say it's 30-70. So books, of course, they are important for the history of a brand, of a manufacturer, the history of a model. But when you talk about vintage watches, there's nothing else that can substitute the real inspection of a timepiece, because images from internet can help definitely, but it's not the same thing. Another aspect that we do and collectors do during the previous, just also to make comparisons, you know, to see how a case has survived compared to another case of the same reference made in similar years. How so the luminous material turned into a deeper patina or lighter patina, because maybe it depends from where the previous owner or the original owner was living. So all these things that you cannot read, you cannot experience by having books or reading blogs. It's just by the personal and in real inspection. And also at the same time, during the previews, you can meet other collectors and share point of views and knowledge as well. So definitely, especially for vintage watches, there's nothing else than the real inspection, having the chance to touch them, to feel them, and to spend time to inspect them deeper.
With that regard, I do want to mention that, you know, and Philips isn't paying us for this podcast, but the preview is a really great way to access some really rare pieces, and a lot of them within your hand. And Philips is very welcoming to a lot of collectors, certainly one of the most welcoming auction houses that I know of collectors coming in and wanting to learn about these pieces. So if you've ever find that a preview is near you, you should definitely make the effort. And I would actually personally allocate a day, take your time, get to feel the pieces, actually observe the pieces rather than just putting it on your wrist, taking the shot and then leaving. Actually try and understand the subtleties of what makes this piece different from another piece. And you'll be surprised. If you sit there with an auction catalog, you will learn a lot more than you realize. So I would definitely encourage all watch enthusiasts to give that a go. I was wanted to ask a bit more personal question, because you have, people probably don't know this, but you spent most of your career within the watch auction industry. And I would like to know, how did it feel to stand on the podium for the first time during your first auction?
Mm-hmm. It was the fall season of 29. So of course, I was extremely nervous, because an auctioneer, if he's nervous or if he's feeling uncomfortable, that feeling is reflected into the room, so can make also the bidders uncomfortable. Secondly, is you have a lot of pressures on your shoulders as auctioneer, because, as I said at the beginning, you have to protect the seller interest. So the seller trusted you to offer his piece, whatever the value is, but for him is extremely, sensitive, valuable. Also, maybe there are some personal feelings attached to it. So you have to be the best to sell it in order to, get the highest results. So an auctioneer that is not feeling comfortable can make mistakes, and mistakes means losing bids and consequentially having a lower result. So first of all, you can have an unhappy seller. Then, of course, you can have impacts on the also financial side of the auction house, because we don't have to forget that, and ruin the whole atmosphere of the auction, or in the auction room, or even now online. So yes, of course, back then I was nervous. I had like 30 lots. Of course, everybody was feeling my tension, but I have to say that it was quite okay. That's why I'm still doing this.
So when
I have a question.
Sure.
So Thomas, I've never been to a live auction before. I've watched you and Oral online, and you guys always create like a very comfortable atmosphere at the beginning, very calm. And even when you're waiting for bids to come in, there's never really like so much awkwardness as you can, I don't know if that's the right word, but there's never that much tension in the room. So can you I'm curious to know, like, what do auctioneers do to both comfortably like maintain the atmosphere inside the room, and then being patient for the phone bidders and being patient for the online bidders? Is it just you have to be very careful and observant with everyone, or like what is it? What steps do you do to kind of maintain the room?
That's a very good question. Thank you for asking that, Jacqueline. Of course, I cannot fully answer that question, because otherwise I will share my secrets.
Yeah.
To
the extent that you can share. Yeah.
So, but definitely, I would say, generally speaking, is if you're feeling comfortable, you reflect that, and automatically the room will feel comfortable. An auctioneer sometimes is associated as a boat captain or a pilot plane. So, you have to give confidence to the passengers that they are the people sitting in the room or watching you online. Say, okay, I'm taking control of these auctions, or this trip that we're going to spend together the whole day. And, just sit and I'll take care of it, and relax and watch what's going on. When you have, sometimes unfortunately happens that a line drops, or you have to wait when you are reach certain level of bidding. You have to wait for the for the phone bidder. In that case, you know, I share a little secret. So sometimes you can just, you know, make a little joke, you know, to entertain the room, or you just smile, or you try to engage with someone else in order to, you know, wait the phone bidder to come back to us.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get Long Long to walk around like, you know, in boxing,
Yes.
2 minutes like this, you know, like looking pretty.
That's a good idea.
That would certainly take the attention of, while, you know, from what my experience anyway.
This is my preliminary interview right now. This is why I'm here.
Oh, lift something up.
I have a question about the people who call in to bid. Is there a certain age group or a type of person that would call in? Because I can't understand why you wouldn't just use the app.
Yes, good question. Because first of all, no, there is no type of age or type of collector. It's just usually people that are on the phone are people that really are desperate to get the piece, and they don't want to miss the opportunity of losing it. Because if you are on the phone with a specialist, the specialist, that is the phone bidder, can stop the auctioneer. If you're online and your app is crashing because maybe you're seated on a Uber, or just cruising, or in an area where the reception is poor, you know, the auctioneer online cannot know that you have a problem. Then the auctioneer should wait for you. On the contrary, on the phone, if something happens, you know, there is one of my colleagues waving at me and say, "Thomas, wait," so I can wait. So phone bidders are really the collectors that they don't want to miss a specific lot.
Yeah, that's true, because I was bidding on an online auction earlier this year, and you know how I don't know the jargon, but with each increase in increments, you know, like 5,000 or 10,000, okay, I'll take 10,000 or whatever. And then the bidding reached a level, and I think we were going by like 50,000 per increment. So then like my next bid would be after I make mine will be actually like 100,000 more, because there's a bidder in between, right? But then like after that, the bidder in between was on a phone bid, and then the specialist was like saying to the auctioneer, "Can you take 25?" And then it was only between me and the other buyer on the phone. So in person, the auctioneer said, "Sure, I'll take 25, and I will give the same opportunity to our online bidder." But when I was online, I didn't have the opportunity. I didn't have the button for 25. I only had 50, which was more than what I wanted to bid. And then you could hear them on the live broadcast, like someone coming and then like covering with a piece of paper. They don't have that option. They don't have that option. And then I just stopped bidding, and then the other person won. But yeah, now you said it, it does make sense. There are certain limits to online bidding. Yeah.
May I ask what piece it was?
The one that I was bidding on?
Yeah.
It was a with Christie's in May. It was a platinum black dial Breguet 3939.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was like 50 50 50 50 all the way, and then I was like, oh my god, this is getting way out of hand. And then I wanted to put in one more. Like I put in, and then the other was like, "Will you accept 25?" And then at that moment, I was like, 25 on like sure, I can do 25, but I didn't have that button. So my next one was like 100 more than my initial bid, which is way too much. So then I just dropped it. But a little side note, they have an online auction right now, and that piece is on the online auction. So I don't know if the other buyer went through with it. It's the exact piece that I was bidding on in May. So I don't know what happened, but thank you for that, Thomas. Next time, maybe I'll register as phone bidder.
I'm absolutely feeling more relief when you said that it was not us that didn't have that option. I said I will kill my IT colleagues. No, but those are called split bids.
Yeah.
That of course a phone bidder can proposed to the auctioneer, but then it's at the auctioneer discretion to accept them or not.
Right.
Because sometimes you have luck and the auctioneer accepts a split bid, sometimes not.
I see. Yeah, in
It
my
depends
case,
from the bidding level.
yeah, in my case, they accepted it, but then I didn't have the split bid option on my computer. So maybe that's something, I don't know, like Phillips can put in on their
Absolutely, we
app
do.
or-
Yeah. Automatically, we adjust the bidding increment according to the level of the bidding.
Yeah.
How many lots does an auction house prepare for an auction on average before you cut off and say, okay, no more pieces?
I remember when I started, the average was between 400 and 600. Now we are more like in the around 300s.
Okay. What's the reason for that? Why is that? Is it to focus on those pieces so there's more focus on them?
First, yes, good answer. Secondly, is that of course, because also if you look at the prices in the last 15 years for whatever reference, they have increased. So now I think just people need more time to think about it. Every single timepiece we would like to spend more attention, as I said, to proper offer them and properly selling them. So it takes more time. So usually we have reduced a little bit of load count for those reasons.
What trends have come and gone that you've seen during your career? Like, what trend are we in now? Do you ever see trends coming back? Is it actually cyclical?
Yes, I mean, yes, of course. I mean, when I started, it was the vintage Rolex mania. Then after I would say at the beginning of the 2010s, there was a slowdown. They went extremely up again. Also Royal Oaks, that for years they were not really like in demand. Previously they were high in demand, now they are back in demand. What definitely is new that we are facing in the last 24, 36 months are definitely the independents, something that before we were not used to see. So, yeah.
All right, going back to your career now, what has been the highlight to you so far?
What do you mean highlight?
So something that happened that was particularly memorable. So
yeah, of course. So it's a quite long story. I try to make it short. So I was back then in Italy, yes, and it was it was spring 2011, and I received an email with a pocket watch, and it was a perpetual calendar with, I could notice a slide on the side, so I did assume back then it was also a repeater, but there was no brand on the dial. The photos were a little bit blurry, so at first sight it didn't really look like an interesting watch. But in any way, I replied to the gentleman saying, if you have time, I would be pleased to meet you and have a further inspection to your timepiece. So the gentleman came, and the moment he handed me over the timepiece, I immediately felt that it was something important. So I opened the case back and the cuvette, and I saw the movement, that it was beautifully made, and it was signed Patek Philippe. So I immediately understood that it was something special, rare, important, and I sent the watch to Geneva for further inspections, and of course asking Patek for more information. So to make it short, it appeared it was a unique piece that even Patek Philippe forgot to basically have made. It was a perpetual calendar with an enameled 24-hour dial, and actually when you activated the minute repeater, the repeater was striking the 24 hours, because today the repeaters, I mean, 99% of them, they're striking the 12 hours. That one was able to strike the 24 hours. So it was a unique piece in pink gold. So I remember that the provisional estimate I provided was 100 to 200,000 Swiss francs. Then when we realized the importance of that piece, we upgraded the estimate to 200 to 400,000 Swiss francs. During the preview before the auction, Mr. Stern came personally to inspect the watch. So I was, honored to meet him in person. And then during the auction, Mr. Stern was on the phone with one of my colleagues. I was the auctioneer. So from 200,000 Swiss francs, I ended up to sell it for 2 million Swiss francs. It was acquired by the Patek Philippe Museum and is published in all the Patek Philippe books, of course, in the pocket watch session areas, because it was unique. I mean, Patek did that piece and nothing else. So it was quite special, But the funny thing was that when I called after the auction the seller and say, "Did you see the results?" "No." "Well, I'm sure you will be pleased because the watch was sold for 2 million. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. That's all. I was expecting a more a better reaction to that, but actually.
So it's like more of a pat on the back. Well done. Bye-bye.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Noted. Thanks, bye.
May I ask, with these unique pocket watches, so they were made on request, right?
Yes.
Like it was, do you remember what year this watch was, like early 1900s?
Yes, it was 1890s, yes.
Wow.
At the end of the 19th century.
Wow. This is what I love. If you catch Thomas for dinner with a couple of bottles of wine, you will hear story after story after story. And you're literally back at the fireplace listening to these stories. And it's just amazing. So, yeah, there's something I miss. There's something that COVID has unfortunately stopped. But hopefully we get to do that soon.
I just wish with these pieces, I mean, there's no way, but like, how cool would it be if you got to know like the life story of the person who ordered it? Like, why instead of 12, you had 24? I don't know if it was like if it's a normal thing back then to do, or like he specially requested it to strike 24. And what was the reason?
What we regarding this specific watch, because it was like the grandchildren of the original owner, but of course the track of the story of the watches was a bit lost. What we know that the original owner was a notary in Naples, and it was a really very precise and accurate person. So he said, well, if I have a minute repeater and it's like 11 p.m. Or 23, according to a 24-hour time zones, why shouldn't strike 11 times instead of 23 times? So I think that was the reason, just for pure pleasure of having fine mechanics and highly complicated functions.
Right.
I mean, that actually reminds me, I had a friend of mine looking for I think it was a 2499, and I actually consulted Thomas about this because it had one of those German dials. So for those that don't know, the dials come in different languages. I think there's Italian, there's English, there's German. I think there's another one as well. Spanish.
Right.
Yeah, French. So German tends to be the least desirable. But when we looked back and looked at the time when this piece was made, I think it was 1943, 1944, something like this. So this was back in wartime.
Was it 1518, not 24?
1518, yeah. And then it was
well done, Jacqueline. Jacqueline 1, then you're 0.
You say 1944? Right. There's no way.
Yeah, I was like, okay, we need to cut that. But I was just thinking, we were talking about that and the collector, and we were thinking, who would have bought that at that time? A German dial. So obviously you're probably German speaking, right? And at that time, when you think of the wartime, and I actually went on the internet to look at exactly what kind of situation the war was at to get that kind of picture. And you just can't fathom who would have commissioned that, who would have ordered that at that time. Just can't understand.
Well, it's the same thing with the gentleman who ordered the steel 1518, and he also picked one up in yellow gold or rose gold. So he bought two at the same time. Like, you think back, I mean, I don't know how much 1518s cost back then, and with steel, it was definitely a special order. But what was the reason for this gentleman to pick up two at the same time in different metals? So it's like, it's so fascinating, but like, we'll just never know. Yeah.
Well, maybe the auction house knows, but
yeah, maybe it's
right?
like well kept. I don't know, but it's
and certainly Patek Philippe know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. But
sure.
moving on and bringing watches to the modern era, one thing you said was photos don't always do the watch justice, and you do need experience of having the watch in your hand. What would you say are the most pressing issues that auction houses face in the long term?
Can you explain more the question?
Like, okay, so we have more and more secondary channels in buying watches now. So you can go to very established like watch boxes, Collected Man. Even there's a new company called Loop This, which is like almost like a 24-hour online auction right now. How does the auction house morph and also combat that? Or, do they adopt new technology to stay relevant with the new generation?
No, definitely we are always looking into innovating our services, how we can better serve potential clients, also how to provide better services to the community, because of course, as you said previously, it doesn't come often to have like a 25, 23 yellow gold with cloisonne or enamel dial. So if we are able to, have high resolution images, videos of a watch available for the whole community, and that will stay forever on our website, that I think is also one of our, jobs to do that. And of course, we have to catch up with the new technologies and also with the new generations that they are more and more keen on using technology. So definitely we are always innovating. We already have several discussions for next year and come several years, what to do better, and how we can provide better services basically to our collectors.
When you said earlier about trends happening within watches, and something gets very popular, and then there's a lull, and then it comes back. Does that comeback coincide with new markets opening up? Because it's going to lead on to my next question, which is, in terms of the Chinese market opening up, what barriers still exist that can be overcome to ignite the interest of vintage watches within China?
No, I don't see that as trend related to opening of new markets. Is the trends that you have new generation of collectors, and after a while they are collecting. They of course increasing their knowledge into watches, and so they realize, wow, at the beginning, of course, I started, to collect, let's say, sports modern Rolexes, and then you start to look into the heritage of a sports Rolex collection, and you discover, the beautiful examples made in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and then you say, wow, I have now the contemporary ones. Why not trying to collect the old ones, the vintage ones? So that multiplied by several collectors. So it is more like life cycle, like you have those 5-10 years cycles where you have a new generation of collectors that they start to interact and be interested in collecting vintage. Because that, for sure, what I can tell is that everyone that starts to buy watches, collect watches, whatever age the gentleman or the lady is, they always start with modern, always. So they go to a shop and buy a new watch. Then after a while, they start to get more passionate, and they start to be more knowledgeable about that. So they start to look into the vintage or pre-owned or whatever. And so they start to look at us or other platforms where, let's say, not available anymore watches, because also, the term vintage was not really like used long time ago. Before, there was like just three main categories: pocket watches, watches that are discontinued, and watches in production. That's it. Now we start to look into antique, vintage, pre-owned, contemporary, modern. We have segmented more and more the market, but the big differences were like if a watch still in production or not. So,
in terms of the categories, what do you have a classification? What is vintage? Because we get that question a lot. So 80s, 90s pieces, even early 2000s. Do you classify those still as vintage pieces?
So technically, vintage watches, because the term vintage comes from the wine area domain and identifies wines that are more than 20 years old, or they were like bottled 20 years old, 20 years ago. So technically, also watches that were made in 2000, early 2000, they can be considered vintage. But the market tends to stop the so-called vintage term watches that were made in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question I'd like to ask is, a lot of the brands right now in the last few years have made it very difficult to access some of the, what you'd say, hot pieces, such as, the Nautilus, even Rolex sports models, right? So what you said about people getting a contemporary modern piece before they're going into vintage, are you seeing mainly now people thinking, I can't get the new one, I'll look straight onto the secondary, and that's helping your business? Or would you say, actually, if more people could access those pieces, we would get more people into watches?
I would say that definitely the new way of distribution for certain brands, for some specific models, impacted us in a positive way, of course, because they maybe don't want to wait 2-3 years to get a piece, so they want to enjoy in a shorter time, so they go straight to the secondary market or to auction houses. Definitely, I think also that creates some frustrations to buyers and collectors. They just say, okay, turn around from that. And I'm not interested anymore in watches. I start maybe at the early beginning, you can say, wow, why so difficult to get a watch, or why should I pay a big premium to get a watch? Maybe they just say, well, maybe it's not my thing, and let me have a look into other domains. Yes, Lung.
So I don't know how to put this into a question, but at the end of the day, you still have to think about profit, right? As an auction house. And if this is a big generalization, but I would think as a first watch, a lot of people might, especially in Hong Kong, I think they would spend about 15 to 20,000 Swiss francs, right? So if these people can't get the modern watches around that price range, would you deliberately source for vintage pieces around that price range and tell the people, hey, the next auction only source for around $20,000?
That's a very, good question, and quite articulated question. So, of course, if you have a collector, or let's say a watch passionate that has a certain budget, for whatever reasons, of course, we try to satisfy. That's why also the auction house catalogs or auctions, watch auctions, are so interesting, because you can find definitely a watch that can suit your interest and suit also your budget. So if we have someone that joins our preview and is looking for a cool sports watch and has a budget, well, we try to satisfy him and, of course, drive him to the selection of watches that we have in that sort of budget.
Yeah, I have a question. So previously when we interviewed, I think it was Eric Wind, who previously worked at Christie's, he was telling us how auction houses through private sale, a large number of private sales are still from customers who are looking for modern pieces, so hard to get pieces such as like Nautilus or Royal Oaks. Um, during first of all, is that like something that's happening in Phillips as well? And second, when say a customer comes to you in private sale asking for a 15202 or whatever, um and you guys get to talking and understanding the demands and preferences of the customer, are there instances where you might feel keen to show the customer some vintage curated pieces such as the 5402 that's like the first series, and if there are cases like that, in general, Thomas, do you see like with these customers, maybe like new buyers into the market, do they still prefer new to vintage even after you've kind of held their hand and explained to them the history of these pieces?
So yeah, you touched a very good point. So let me share with you these examples that happened to me. It was last spring. So yes, a gentleman approached me and say, I know that it's extremely difficult to get a 5711. Can you try to, source one for me? And I said, yes, of course. But then talking to the gentleman, I understood more is, let's say, style, why he was looking for a 57, for a Nautilus in steel. And going deeper in the conversation, I offered him, there was a beautiful example offered in stainless steel of a reference 3700. And he said, because if you look at now, basically the prices of a first generation Nautilus is the same, more or less, of a 5711 in steel. So I said, excuse me, sir, you are such a fine and wise gentleman. Why you're not going into a beautiful preserved first generation that was less produced? You have the iconic and the original design of Mr. Genta instead of a watch that has been produced in like, I don't know how many thousands of examples, and you can see everywhere. You can be more like distinctive. And the guy switched on and he bid and he bought the watch. So I was very happy. But generally speaking, the percentage of people that does that is 50%. Still, that there are some watch collectors that they know, I want the latest one, I want this one, whatever the price will be, I want this one. So that's good. We passion and collecting is beautiful because we don't see things always in the same way.
Yeah, I like how you referred to him as a wise gentleman.
But I'm sure he will be more pleased to have a 3700 in the future than
Exactly.
a 5711. So
yeah, great.
Would you say also that's the reason why people are more interested in the independents recently, because of the access to modern pieces being so, even if you can go through an auction house, the price is quite high for those pieces right now. And if you look at the independents, maybe you'd think you'd get more value there.
I'm sure there is a percentage of that reason, but I strongly believe as a watch passionate that, unfortunately, as I said, the pandemic that we have faced and facing is one of the worst horrible things that happened to the world recently. But at the same time, people were at home and they had time to, read and start to deep and look into other kind of watches that maybe they were not really looking to it. So a passion, more knowledge on those early independence watchmakers models increased dramatically because they realized, we always say to identify a good watch, let's say, there are like three main aspects. First is quality, second is rarity, third is provenance. So for independence, you have definitely the first two because quality, we all know the quality that the independents are using compared to other like more established brands. A second, the rarity, because we all know the productions are like a fraction of what other more established brands are producing. So, and for ages, the average prices for highly complicated timepieces made by independents were completely, in my point of view, undervalued. So luckily, the market picked up, and consequentially, the prices went up. So,
Right, I'm going to finish with my last question here for you, which is finally, what timepiece do you wish would surface that you haven't seen in the flesh, but you know exists out there?
I always answer the same in the same way. I really would like one day to have a chance to see, or more like in a really dream way, to touch the Speedmaster that Buzz Aldrin was wearing on Apollo 11 mission. That we know is somewhere, but we cannot locate it.
Right, for those that don't know, Thomas is a huge Speedmaster fan. Huge. Yeah. So
Thomas, what did you think of the Speedmasters that Jeff Bezos and his team wore to the most recent expedition, I guess you would say?
I was so proud about the Speedies that, again, a watch that was made like over 60 years ago is still like the favorite choice for everyone that travels to into space.
Yeah. I feel like they could have done more advertisement, because I was aware of it, but then I didn't see much blogs blogging about it. Only like after they came back, and then they took the photos, and then we saw them wrapped around the outside of their jackets, and then some YouTube people started talking about it. I was like, oh, that's cool. But then I feel like Omega kind of, well, maybe they think, oh yeah, we don't need to do it, like we did it the official Apollo. We don't need to do it this time. But it was really cool, the new design, I thought.
For sure, but Jackie, let me text Mr. Monachon and telling him that you were complaining about his marketing.
Okay.
But you're right. But who knows? Maybe they have other things planned for the rest of the year, or
Yeah, for sure.
Right. That completes round one of the interview. But we now have what we call the Reverso round, where you're allowed to ask us 3 questions of your liking. You can choose to be whether watch related or non-watch related. So completely up to you. So you fire away.
So yes, but well, I have the chance and pleasure to know Daniel and Lung Lung for quite a while, but not you, Jacqueline. So I would like to ask you first, well, how and when did you start to be a watch collector, watch passionate? How that happened?
Okay. So I'll keep the story short. Basically, I've always liked watches, but as an accessory kind of growing up, until I got my first, real watch as like a graduation present from high school that my parents gave me. It was a modern 37 millimeter mid-size Yachtmaster with the the Oyster Flex bracelet. And I loved it. I wore it throughout, the end of high school and into college. And then in my last year, my second last semester of college, so right before COVID started, it was my mom's birthday in the fall, and she was turning 50 at a time, and I wanted to give her something nice. So I talked with my dad, and then we came up with a decision that we're going to buy her a watch. And at that time I had never spent like much money on watches or really anything before, so I had the limited amount in my bank account. I was really scared because I've never spent such a big amount, which was about $50,000. So then I was like, okay, I need to spend it where it counts, right? Like, I need to maximize the happiness quota that my mom's gonna get from this amount of money that I have. So I researched the brands, the big 3 and whatnot, and then I ended up getting her an annual calendar from Patek Philippe. And after I made the purchase, that was a month in my research, I realized that as soon as I delivered her the watch, I wanted to buy something of my own, because I've been reading about it so much that I kind of want to start my like trite collection, as you say. So then I went ahead and then I bought a vintage watch, which was a pre-Daytona 6234. And it just kind of started from there. So I started in late 2019 with a pre-Daytona and then my modern Rolex, which I later had to sell to fund another purchase. And then it just kind of like kind of just snowballed because of COVID. And then I had really nothing to do during COVID. Like the first few months of COVID, I kind of just, was home and then was talking to a lot of people, bought my first Cartier, and then my obsession with vintage Cartier kind of started. And then in the summer of 2020, I bought a vintage Patek from John Reardon, and then like my obsession with Patek started. So yeah, long story short, it started in late 2019 and I got into it really because of my mom. But then recently my mom found out just how deep I was into watches. Like, she was completely unaware. She knew that I liked it because, I always tell her, it's really nice that you have that watch and it's really nice that we have this connection. But only recently did she find out, just like she found out I have a podcast with these two. And then I was, oh my God, you're spending a lot of time and money on watches. So it was kind of funny. But I was telling Dan and Lon recently, I'm looking forward to, just fingers crossed, I really want to go to the showing for the Geneva Fall Auction. Like, I will try my best to go. But I'm a little bit sad too because I don't think these two can come with me. It's kind of like something we talked about, like we would always go to the first together, but I really want to go. So I'm kind of caught in a dilemma of whether if I should go or not. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry if I can take a few minutes more. I really appreciate your answer because first, I'm glad to hear that my theory about COVID impacted collectors because they had more time to study, and you are an evidence of that. So well done. Second, I would like to say about cycles. We discussed previously about trends and cycles. I perfectly remember that in the 80s, early 90s, especially in Italy, collecting vintage Cartier was one of the most, 2499s were in second or third position back then. If you had like a beautiful white gold tank centré or Benoit from the 60s or whatever, you were like really the king of cool. So well done. There is a nice, let's say, more interesting book that if you don't have it in your collection, you should consider to acquire. It's called White Cartier.
I've been looking for that book. They have a pocket-sized one, and then they have the one in paperback, not paperback, hardcover with the red. And every time I watch a Hodinkee video, you know how there's a bookshelf? There are two on the bookshelf. I can see it. And then I'm like, why? You're so selfish. Come on. Just put them up for sale. Because I can't find them. But it's, oh yeah, I love that book. I've seen a few PDF screenshots.
Let me see what I can do for you, Jacques.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, but
another one of the greatest living collector is Auro Montanari. Is also a huge Cartier lover. So yeah, definitely.
Actually, before we move on to your second question, Thomas, if I just like to, you you told that story. How much did the Instagram community, because you went onto Instagram during that period, did it accelerate your collecting? Did it make you go deeper into the watch collecting journey? What kind of impact did Instagram have?
Is for me or to?
No, Jacqueline? Sorry, for Jacqueline. Yeah.
Oh, for me, I thought it was for Thomas.
No, for Jacqueline. Yeah.
What impact did Instagram have?
Yeah.
Like a very large impact, I would say.
Okay.
First of all, I don't have many friends around me who are into watches. Like my closest friend into watches is Jennifer, who is from Phillips. So we talk. but then Jennifer is more into like she's a great source of information, but because I'm not there, like, you know, we don't live in the same city, so I have to kind of resort to finding like-minded people online, which Instagram, like that is Instagram, right? So starting from finding my community, finding my group of people, to meeting you guys and becoming like very close with a few of them, to learning, and then seeing a lot of the pieces that you can't see otherwise. um a great impact, and I'm glad that, and I think it will only you know, continue this way. Whereas, I mean, we've experienced it in the beginning of this year. We had a clubhouse boom, right? And that was kind of a very, very strong ended thing that was in I guess not just the watch community, but like the world general. But now it's kind of like died down a little bit, maybe because people are going back to work or whatnot. But because Instagram is so easy and it's not really time consuming and whatnot, um, I'm very happy to have joined. And Jennifer actually motivated me, kind of like, you know, poked me and asked me to start my account. So I have to thank Jen for that. Yeah.
And going back to you, Jacqueline, the third point was the experience, the Geneva auction or Geneva
Yes.
like experience. Yeah, definitely. Of course, I wish you all the, you know, the best to go there and experience that this fall. If it's not this fall, I'm sure it's going to be next year. Unfortunately, travel restrictions are quite, you know, challenging now. But I'm glad you have said that, because every time there is a new collector experience with Geneva Madness, as we call it internally, because it's a madness, you have a week of really like watch experience that you first could not even imagine. Second, you can meet so many lovely collectors worldwide, because previously, of course, the international community was traveling to Geneva. Experience 50 francs burgers. Also, that is something that you have to do. So yeah, it's definitely something that I always encourage every watch collector to experience at least once, because it's great, it's memorable.
Yeah, I really want to go. I was talking to Dan about it, like I really want to go, but at the same time I'm a little bit intimidated, not in like a bad way, but I just feel shy, because I feel like if I go by myself and there are all these like great pieces that I've only read about or like seen in photos, and then there are probably people that I know of, but they don't know who I am, and then I don't know. I'm just a little bit, I feel like it's gonna be a little awkward. But it's
Like,
something
no, don't worry.
Yeah.
Like Daniel said before, just come to
Yeah.
Philips, you will feel at home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
I actually said to Jacqueline, I gave the example of Long Long. You know, there's many times where Long Long has just gone through the passion of watches, not knowing anybody either. And then when you get there, you know how you address everybody by Instagram handles,
Yeah.
right? So there's that phase of not knowing you, but very quickly they go, oh, you're a dose of time, you know. Yeah. Didn't expect you to be a girl or something. Right, Thomas, your second question.
Yes, to Long Long, straightforward. So when you're going to be nominated the next AP brand ambassador?
Man,
I love that question.
I so wish it was Paddock. I wish that Paddock would reach out to me and be like, "Can you be an ambassador?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was right, but I missed the brand. All right, so Patek as well. Yeah. So when?
Yeah.
The season next year?
It's the season. AP, look for me. Please don't. Please don't.
Slide into my DMs.
Yeah. I'll take that sponsorship.
Yeah. Okay, but wait, of the new collection, if you had to choose one.
I swear to God. Okay, I know that none of them are gonna listen to this. I told Dan I struggle. Like we were going on about like, man, like even if the black ceramic, this and that, whatever, I actually struggle. So I'm actually I mean, like, obviously some of the AP people in Hong Kong know I'm back, right? So they're like, when are you out of quarantine? Da da da. And I'm actually thinking, man, should I just not tell anyone? Because I have nothing I want to buy.
No,
So I
just
don't
go
want to like,
see. Just go see it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
But it is like when you notice,
yeah,
you see, I think there are only so many Royal Oaks you can look at
yeah.
because you're looking at the case shape and the case design, right? And either ceramic, I don't think a ceramic is really targeted to collectors like us. Yeah, I think it targeted hype mentality collectors, right?
Yeah.
I always think stainless steel is fine, looks great, you know, very practical,
Classic.
works. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've been using that for a long, long time.
But
Yeah.
I have to say, Thomas, for the longest time, I have been avoiding Paddock because I know that like the moment you start, it's really hard to go back and look at the other brands and feel as excited. So I have actually deliberately for at least 2 years just avoided it because I know once you start with vintage Paddock, you're just going to keep going. So I kept saying, okay, take it slow, go through AP. And then I even looked at Vacheron. I was like, maybe go through Vacheron, like, you know, try and delay my whole like process. But then, yeah, like this year I was just like, just stop this, just
Yeah.
stop messing around, just go for it.
You are
So, yeah.
worthy. You have
Yeah,
to tell
are
yourself
worthy.
you aren't
Yeah.
like, you know, making an embarrassment out of the
Yeah,
brand. No, but
yeah,
I think
yeah,
I think for you it would
yeah,
be like vintage Paddock and then like the
yeah,
ultimate the and then maybe Independence. I mean, that's
yeah.
really
So I'll only go between those two now. It's like for the longest time, me and Jacqueline would say like, okay, I don't want to wear a Paddock because I don't want to embarrass the brand. So I
Yeah.
don't want to be like a clown wearing it, and it actually
Yeah.
makes the watch look bad.
Yeah.
So
Now it's
yeah,
just like
no,
it's fine.
it's fine. I'll just
We're already
embarrass the
clowns.
brand.
Yeah, we'll just embarrass it.
But I think it's also because there
Yeah.
are like a lack of options on the market for you to even be interested in. So you have no choice but to go into vintage Paddock right now, right? If you're
Okay, there
to
are
continue.
Okay, if I can actually buy some of the modern Paddocks, like the rare handcraft or you
Yeah.
okay, yeah, the rare handcraft,
Yeah.
right? Of course I would buy it.
But you
the thing is,
can't.
yeah,
Like,
I
you
can't.
can't.
And I just don't have I really believe that at the end of the day, like it's about respect, right? Like I respect you as a brand, I can wait. But if I have to play a silly game, like maybe I'm just not your customer at this point in time. So then I'll come back another day when I'm older or something. So
Yeah.
right now I'm just gonna buy vintage. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also there are a lot of under rated pieces in vintage right now. So
I agree. Yeah.
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 All right, Thomas, your third question.
Yeah, so very easy, but as a way quite complex. So what are you looking for next, Daniel? So I met you. I know that you spend a lot of time researching, studying. So
Yeah.
what is your next target?
Next target in terms of a watch or
No, you can answer a watch, or you can answer like, oh, I would like to explore more. I don't know.
Well, I think
Design of the cases of the 1930s. I don't know.
Well,
So,
actually, I think I would like to.
3970.
I actually think I would like to spread more information within the mainland Chinese market about vintage watches. I don't think the information education there is accessible. And, you know, my slip up on the 1518 2499 really gave me a lot of credibility there. But it's certainly.
Was that an actual slip up, or were you thinking about 1518, but you said 2499?
No, because I was thinking about the
not to rub it into your face.
Well, clearly you are. But yeah, that's something I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
Like, I always want to spread the word about watches, and I think the access to vintage watches is certainly within the information. Okay, we said 30% from books, 70% from the actual watches, but even the 30%, most of those books are written in English, French, or Italian, right? And I think if I would like more people to experience what I've experienced through watches, and if you can make that accessible in a way that is towards the new generation, that'd be something that I would like to work on. And at the same time, it doesn't prohibit my learning process, because I'm looking at all of this stuff, looking at all this content and trying to package it up in a nice way. I'm also having to research a lot of the vintage pieces. So going into vintage is certainly something that interests me, and more, as you say, rarity, like real rarity rather than manufactured exclusivity, is something that I'm very similar to Long Long, where I'm getting turned off, like what you said, Thomas. Some collectors will not play that game. They will say, no, forget it. Yeah. And I'll look into other avenues because I still want to continue this journey. And naturally you will go into vintage and have a deeper appreciation of a brand's history. Also, why those pieces are perhaps more special than the modern pieces, and have just a general all-round appreciation. So that's what I think I'm going to work on. Yeah. Right. So I know you said the highlight was that special piece that you mentioned from Patek Philippe, but actually I think the highlight is that you're actually the first one to try a new improved pump push around, right? So I think you need to include that in your CV next time. But in this round, Thomas, you have to answer as many questions within a minute. You can have 3 passes if you want, right? So no pressure. Italy just won the Euro, so no pressure at all, right?
All right.
The job you would like to do if you were not in the auction industry.
This one.
Okay. Best thing about the auction industry.
Sorry?
Best thing about the auction industry.
People.
The worst thing about the auction industry.
People.
Yeah, I was going to say
The
people
financial
as well.
aspect.
Okay, financial aspect. People see you as an expert. Who do you see as an expert or specialist?
Humble watch people.
Give us one book recommendation that you should read if you are a watch enthusiast.
Definitely the Moon Watch.
Give us one book recommendation that is not related to watches.
Interesting, the book that Christie's did for the 250th anniversary. Interesting.
Okay, right. How
That
much was
was-
that?
5 questions.
That was
5 questions.
1 minute?
Yeah, that was 1 minute.
Dang.
All
Right.
right.
Okay, it's okay. We'll do second round.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that was a lot of fun. There was 1 pass there. So how many questions?
5.
Was that? 5 questions. Right. So Thomas, I hope you enjoyed it. Before we go though, I think we can use this opportunity to announce the upcoming auction.
Well, yes. Well, the Felix activities for the fall. So we have first a cross-departmental online sale called Intersect that we're gonna start on September 16th to the 23rd. Then, of course, we have the Geneva sales scheduled for November 5th and 7th, and then we follow with Hong Kong, November 28, 29. Finally, ending the season with New York on December the 11th. So stay tuned on our social media accounts. We already have announced, I think, quite interesting and exciting timepieces. Stay tuned. We're gonna announce more.
Great. We're actually thinking of doing a live session together with us and some of our followers, right, to watch the auction together. So let's see. And I wish you all the best and best of luck for that. I really do hope I see you soon as well, Thomas, personally. Also, one more thing before we leave is make sure you follow us on the Waiting List podcast on Instagram. I know there's not a huge amount of content right there, but we will be revamping it soon and hopefully engaging with you guys more. So see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Thank you for tuning in to the Waiting List podcast. Hit the subscribe button and the next episode will come straight to your phone as soon as it's ready. Whilst I'm here, please remember to leave a nice review and follow us on Instagram at the Waiting List podcast.